Alright, do characters in horror movies ever actually watch horror movies? I mean, you're just gonna go off of a random ass ad and a random ass stall to a creepy motherfucker's house in the middle of nowhere in the dark and just start drinking the first thing it gives you? Oh yeah, seems legit to me. So Tusk tells the story of a podcaster who goes to a secluded house to talk to an old man with a lot of stories of his adventurous life at sea and ends up being turned into a fucking walrus. What's up guys, this is a patron request requested by Lorenzo Antonino, one of my bigger supporters. He's been wanting me to check this movie out amongst a couple others for quite a while, and here I am. This is a Kevin Smith film. I believe this is, aside from Yoga Hosers, his most recent film, so somewhat recent. A lot of you have probably seen it. Those of you that haven't, buckle up. So a little backstory with this one. Kevin Smith, if you don't know, also has a podcast and some other things that he does outside of filmmaking, and they had an episode where I guess Kevin Smith or his guest had seen some kind of a really creepy Craigslist ad that's somewhat similar to the main villain Howard Howe, his like little Craigslist ad that he had inside of a stall.
Okay, so this is the actual advertisement.
It's a house.
Okay.
The guy who's renting you the room is private. It's not an agency. This is the letter that he included on his page. Hello. I am looking for a lodger in my house. I have had a long and interesting life. Among the many things I have done in my life is to spend 3 years alone on St. Lawrence Island. And I was kept in companionship with a walrus whom I named Gregory. And upon leaving the island, I was heartbroken for months. I have, over the last few months, been constructing a realistic walrus costume. Which should fit most people. To take on position as my lodger, you must be prepared to wear the walrus suit for approximately 2 hours each day. Whilst in the walrus costume, you must be a walrus.
And they kind of were just riffing back and forth on the podcast, coming up with their own little, off-the-cuff horror film based off of Walrus and this guy, and it basically was an idea that spawned out of two guys fucking around, and they said, you know what? Let's fund this bitch and make a movie. And I do like Kevin Smith's movies. I have not seen a lot of them, like Mallrats and even Clerks. I know, don't shoot me, I haven't seen that, but I love Jay and Silent Bob. I love Chasing Amy, and I even really liked Red State, which was like his first kind of dipping his toe into the horror thriller genre. I thought that one was really good. So this followed Red State, and I walked into it thinking that it was probably going to be equally as good as Red State, maybe even a little bit better, being that he kind of stretched his legs a little bit. Let's see what the guy can do in the horror genre. Starting off with the good things about Tusk. I will say, Kevin Smith's a damn good director. I know that he has said numerous times that he doesn't consider himself a good director. I know there's a lot of people out there that probably don't consider him a good director because he's mostly done kind of lowbrow humor comedies, but the dude really does have talent. This is a well-shot, well-filmed movie. Whether or not you like the stuff that's going on screen or the storyline or everything, that's its own separate issue. But as far as where to point the camera, how to shoot scenes, how to transition scenes and edit the story together and cinematography, things like that, the dude actually can make a really high quality film. Moving on from that, I think all of the actors in this do a pretty damn good job, with the exception of one that I'm going to talk about. But you got Justin Long in here, who's an actor that I've always found pretty underrated. He's only kind of popped up in horror randomly here and there, like Jeepers Creepers, which I'm a huge fan of. He was really good in Drag Me to Hell, and I think he's really good in this one. He's obviously very funny, but whenever he does serious roles like this, the dude can act, and I'm actually kind of surprised he hasn't done more.
Allie, you gotta help me. I swear to God, I'm not joking, okay? I was abducted. I'm in Manitoba. This guy wants to turn me into an animal or something. He's fucking nuts. You gotta please come. Please, 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 please.
Then you get the pretty much star of this movie, or the one that's really trying to kind of showcase the one that Kevin Smith really wants you to pay attention to, and that is Michael Parks. Now, this is the guy who, for the longest time, the biggest thing you could recognize him for as far as mainstream movies is the sheriff at the beginning of From Dusk Till Dawn. Well, Tarantino and Kevin Smith are huge fans of this guy, and even though unfortunately he's passed away by the time I'm doing this video, they're at the end of his life and at the end of his career. They were really starting to put him into some really good roles, and Hollywood was starting to take notice of this guy. Obviously he did Tusk here, he was really good in Red State. Tarantino had used him a couple of times, as well as Robert Rodriguez, obviously with From Dusk Till Dawn and when they did Grindhouse. Then he had movies like Bloodfather where he was starting to show up in. This is a guy that has a ton of acting talent. He really can command the screen. He can do all kinds of different characters and just make you just glue your eyes to whatever he is doing. And it's a shame that he didn't really start to get the momentum that he had at the end of his career a little bit sooner, because there could have been a lot of really iconic roles this guy could have brought to the screen. But he's really good in his role of Howard Howe, the main antagonist in this.
The itty bitty spider crawled up the water spout.
Holy shit.
Now came the rain and washed the spider out.
Let me out of this chair, you fucking psycho! Let me out!
You got Haley Joel Osment thrown in here randomly. Haven't seen him do shit since Sixth Sense, but he's kind of like the partner with the podcast. He does pretty good. Even the girlfriend does pretty good. So everybody, the small cast that this movie has, performs really well. I also think for the first act, maybe the first 30-40 minutes of this film, it does have a really good job at building tension. It does have a nice little eerie tone to it. Horror fans know all the writing on the wall where things are going to start to go really bad with all the decisions that Justin Long's character is making. He's kind of a dick, so you almost don't even mind the fact that he's making all the bad decisions because you kind of want to see him pay for, you know, the choices that he's made to a degree. But the movie does do a good job in its first act of really setting the tone and setting up this story, and as far as building tension and building a little bit of eerie dread to what is going to happen. That part of the movie I think was done really well. And when you do get into the eventual walrus shit, the body horror, I think that the makeup and the walrus suit design is actually kind of cool. Like, it's weird as hell. It's almost like a car wreck, because you look at it and you're like, that is so fucking weird and just off-putting. I don't want to watch this anymore, but I can't stop looking at it because it's so intricate. There's faces here, there's fingers and hands, and it's so Texas Chainsaw Massacre to the 9th degree that you're like, do I love it or hate it? Now moving on to the negatives. I feel like the movie really loses its way once you're actually introduced to Walrus Justin Long. I feel almost like that part of the movie should have been pushed off a little bit further, and they should have focused more of the movie with scenes between him and Michael Parks, just mentally disturbing, kind of psychological dialogue scenes. Like, maybe not too much, because the movie does feel, which I'll get into, like a little bit padded, but I think if they would have spent more time with him just fucking with him mentally, or maybe he knows his podcast, or he's kind of researched him after he contacted him, and he's kind of trying to teach him lessons by messing with him mentally for a while, and then eventually build to the walrus and the body horror and stuff like that. I feel like the movie might have done a little bit better, because that section of the movie, the first act, was what I thought was the most effective. But it kind of gets right into it about halfway through the movie, and then from then on, the movie really just feels like it's already blown its wad, and you're kind of just waiting for the end. Like, it still kind of is disturbing to a degree, and it is exceedingly weird and just kind of off-putting the way that the story goes between Michael Parks and this new Mr. Tusk version of Justin Long, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's entertaining past that point. Like I've already mentioned too, the story that this movie presents does feel like it would have worked better as like a short film, maybe 30-40 minutes long or an hour long. Being padded out to full feature length, at least the way that they've executed it, it doesn't feel like the story can withstand that runtime. And past the point of the introduction of the walrus, it does feel like the movie just starts to drag and kind of just drag its feet behind, and you're sitting there like, where is this going? Is this gonna end at some point? And it's disappointing, because the first act, maybe even the first half of the movie, has a nice little clip, a good little pace, a good direction that it's going, and then it just kind of goes off a cliff. I also feel like the execution of the tone, especially after the introduction of the walrus, is really just kind of all over the place. Like, the first section of this movie, there's a little bit of that subtle dialogue, kind of that undercurrent of Kevin Smith writing that most of his fans will enjoy, although I don't feel like it's quite as strong as some of his other work. But there's a pretty good mix of Kevin Smith comedy with tension and, you know, disturbing horror and ratcheting up a little bit of that dread. There's a nice mix of that.
How far is Bifrost from here?
It's about 2 hours from here.
It's about 2 hours away.
I hate American guys.
Once you get to the second half of the film, it feels like it's juggling too many balls. Like it just wants to be way out there, mentally disturbing, just shock value. It wants to be over the top humor and weirdness. It wants to put you off here. It wants to introduce like themes of relationships and regret and humanity, and it just, there's way too much being juggled by the second half of the film that I don't feel like it catches any of those balls. And finally, you have a character that is introduced in the second half of this film who is like this inspector, this French detective who has kind of been on the trail for Howard Howe for a long time, and he teams up with Haley Joel Osment and the girlfriend. He's gonna, you know, he gives all the backstory, all the exposition for how long this guy's been murdering people and trying to find the one to be Mr. Tusk. And, you know, it's played by Johnny Depp. Spoiler alert, I guess, but the movie's old as shit, so if you haven't seen it, sorry. I'm not really a huge fan of Johnny Depp's weirdness. Like, I like him when he does serious stuff. I think that he was really good back in his early career. I'm not a big Tim Burton fan, so I know I'm gonna lose some of you with that, but just Johnny Depp tends to do serious stuff, and then he does the weird shit where he can put on costumes and act kooky, and this is much more in that vein, where he puts the mustache on and he's doing his best, like, Pink Panther, fucking Steve Martin kind of impersonation where it doesn't fit with the movie at all. And I don't know if that was something that Kevin Smith really wanted him to do. This was supposed to be the beginning of like a loose trilogy, if that's the character he wanted to carry through all of them, but it just is off-putting for me. I don't find that entertaining. I don't find it cool that Johnny Depp shows up in this if he's gonna do that type of role. And it just doesn't fit for me with the tone the movie was going for in the first half, and it's just another one of those balls that the movie's trying to juggle and drops. So overall, guys, this movie is odd and unique enough that I do think if it interests you, it's worth checking out, but I feel like the whole package is not nearly as well executed as the beginning of it. I feel like there's a much better movie you could have with this wild-ass idea, and to me, it's one of those films where it's disappointing the longer it goes on because of the things that Kevin Smith could have done. But overall, it's a movie I watch and I'm like, all right, that exists. So if a movie directed by Kevin Smith about a man being tortured and turned into a walrus excites you, then check this thing out, but do not spend a whole lot of money on it because it is very much of a mixed bag. Check this thing out online and stream it. So what do you guys think of Tusk? Is this something that you thought was wild and unique and you absolutely loved it and want to see more of these types of films out of Kevin Smith, or is this just way too out there for you and just did not provide the entertainment value that you were looking for with it? Where in that camp do you fall? Let me know down in the comment section below, guys. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you want to be a subscriber to this channel and check out some more content that I have available. Please check the video description below for social media links like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and my Patreon page so you can join Lorenzo in the fun and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only, and if a certain tier, might even be able to request a review as well. And my Teespring store, which is just below all that. Scroll down, you'll see all my merchandise designs created by Woody Bowen. Please check that out, and if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check those out by clicking right over here.